of S2.68030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice the decisions of the Arts Commission may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of certiorari. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the commission. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met. So I want to welcome everybody. That I am really thrilled to be our chair this year. I'm looking so forward to working with each of you. We've got a really good team here of thought leaders. I look around this and we're filled, and I'm really happy. So thank you. I'd like to start with a roll call first. So Vivian, can you start the roll call, please?
I sure can. Commissioner West.
Here.
Commissioner Harden. Commissioner Lefkowitz.
Here.
Commissioner Brown. Commissioner McCoy. Commissioner Jester.
Here.
Commissioner Khalil, sorry.
Here.
Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Kurtz.
Here.
Commissioner Love.
Present.
Commissioner Nichols Phillips. Commissioner Rosenblum.
Here.
Commissioner Wade. Commissioner Watts.
Here.
Commissioner Yu.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our guests for being here. I'd like to remind you to sign in when you come in, and if you're here for public comment, please sign in for that. Thank you so much. Excuse me. We appreciate everybody being here, and we want to give everybody time to speak. So I'd like to go ahead and read the land acknowledgement before we begin and offer that, and then we can move into public comment. Metro Art stands and holds space on the unceded and sovereign lands of the Cherokee East, Yuchi, and Shawnee peoples who have stewarded it for generations. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in the hope of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. We acknowledge we are all standing on ancestral lands, and we honor the thousands of enslaved African peoples whose lives were physically and spiritually stolen. We pay respects to elders, past and present. Metro Arts invites you to join in our commitment in getting to know our Native communities in more meaningful ways in alignment with our restorative arts practice. Now, we will open the floor for public comment. We have a maximum of 20 minutes allocated for comment. 2 minutes per speaker.
All right, the first we have for public comment is Reverend Davy Tucker. You can come to the mic, and I'll let you know when we are at the 1 minute mark. And your time starts now.
Hold on a minute.
Okay.
I'm starting my time. Chair, I don't know, can I possibly have maybe an extra minute?
Yes.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
And in old business, if we need to circle back, I can circle back to you if we
Thank
need
you.
to. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll let you know. What marker do you want me to let you know? At like 2 minutes?
Good morning, Commission. It seems like I've become a regular here. First, I just want to acknowledge the situation that you as commissioners inherited, that you came into, that you may not be familiar with a lot of the background, but I also want to acknowledge the task that was put before Interim Commissioner Paulette Coleman and the difficulty that comes with that. But this situation was a long fought one. You read about it in the news and all of that. There were tons of investigations. There were allegations thrown around. There were relationships that have been fractured over this. And a conciliated agreement of all parties was the result of this. Being a conciliated agreement, there were a lot of issues left on the table for both sides. Questions that MHRC still would like to have answers for, but there's no medium for it because we agreed to this. At the core of this is about the equitable distribution of public resources, of which MHRC is to protect the general welfare of all Nashvillians is something that I personally take as a sacred trust in carrying out my job as ED of MHRC. I sent you a letter last week detailing the concerns from our commission. Also, in that letter said if you were to watch the minutes from that meeting, it took up the first 45 minutes of our conversation. Our commission was split on even accepting the conciliated agreement because it did not answer the questions. But staff and our deliberation and our involvement in it, we thought that this we thought that this was the best thing for all parties concerned, but also for the arts ecosystem. In that letter, we had since July to plan for the community engagement portion. We blew past that date. We amended to accept what we feel may not be on a continuum of community engagement. It may not be one of the highest forms, but we acquiesced to that point to try to move forward so that the artists could get funding. But all the way through that process, we've offered our help, and very often our request or the correspondence does not get answered. Anything that I say, if you like receipts, we can give you those receipts.
Time.
Whatever criteria that you decide upon must be considered through some type of equity lens. Kind of like a math project. Whatever you come up with, you got to show your work, because we're going to challenge you on behalf of the people that we don't go back to what the situation was before of a clearly, from MHRC's position, a inequitable, continuous distribution of public resources. We also believe that you're going to miss that there's a great possibility that the January 6th deadline is going to be missed also. Then it runs up to what you're going to do in FY26. This agreement provides framework for however you're going to award grants. And so it's very important that it be included in. We've often felt like that our position has not been attended to in the way that we feel is appropriate. And again, I just want to push that MHRC has to be relentless in this regard. If not, then we become derelict of what we understand our job to be. The agreement speaks to how grants will be awarded in the future. And it's not that we want to continue this. If you're going to get good criteria, which will relate to good policy, you need as many people involved in that process. And you all need to be involved in that process in a very, very real way. So, again, I just want to reiterate that MHRC has been saying we will help you, we will help you, we will help you, and nobody's taken up the help. But on the other side, we will not support any document that we feel is not in the best interest of Nashville and your arts ecosystem that you represent. So that being said, how do we make our communication better? How do we make corresponding better? How do we make answering emails and returning phone calls better? We've been getting inundated with calls from artists because they say that they get no response. We've been inundated with even calls from some of you that we will willingly share with you. Those of you that reached out to us, we've given you everything that you want that we have. We also believe strongly that some of the past work around equity is valuable. Some of the past work that you already possess provides you with a roadmap and a guide forward. But it's almost as though that work is tied to a personality and so thus makes it bad. But that's not true. that work can guide you toward the outcome that you're going to have. MHRC, again, is committed to the fair, equitable distribution of public resources. And again, if you remember all of what happened to get us here, we're not afraid again to move back into that. And we would hope that that would be unnecessary, that we can come together to work for the common good of all Nashvillians. Thank you. Thank you for those additional moments, Chair.
Thank you, Director Tucker.
All right. Next, we have Councilwoman Joy Stiles. And your time starts now.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Almost a year ago, we started this conversation with the first publicly held meeting when I was Chair of Arts, Parks, Libraries, and Entertainment. And my concern was that we were going to end up in the place that we're sitting right now. That somehow we were going to do a lot of histrionics within Metro, and artists would suffer while we played political games behind the scenes. And we're in the midst of it. And I hate it. I hate it for you that are new. I hate it for all of us that are in it, because we're all tired of dealing with it. Sitting here and listening to the lack of response from the department when there is a legal scenario that is taking place as a result of the shenanigans last July and August, or rather last August. Anything that takes place here has to be voted on by council. I cannot stress enough, as I am the regular person that shows up. If it's slaw, it's going to get deferred, and that's going to affect artists. And I'm telling you, I am committed to a deferral at this point. And I'm feeling like there's some internal things happening that need to be addressed. So I'm definitely going to be reaching out to the Chair West to have conversations, Interim Director Coleman, because my colleagues, as was said in the Women's Caucus meeting, are coming. They are coming as vultures to touch the budget. They are coming because there is not resolution, it is not swift. And to Mr. Tucker's point, since July, and it's November, I don't have a reason for why this hasn't happened. I haven't seen it, and I've been here all along. It is unacceptable. And how many people are in a department is not an excuse for why we don't have what is needed. So, December 3rd meeting is really the only time that you would have to be able to present something for council to hear, because you guys, I'm not sure if you have a meeting next month or not, but we meet the third Tuesday. So to me, it sounds like we're not going to hit another deadline, and that is horrific for the artists here in town. It breaks my heart because we have owed them money for so long, and now we owe them a process, which really, frankly, if I'm being honest, we should have never had this year. We should have just waited, because it would have taken some stress off of them. At least we would have been able to sit here and say we cleaned up the last situation. But I'm still hopeful that we're going to come around this mountain. I guess we're going to look at coming around the mountain now in 2025. But grants committee, I hope that you can get some work in before the end of the year and really have something to present to us that's going to make sense. That's going to make sense to the conciliation work group. That's going to make sense to council members. Please feel free to come to the Arts, Parks, and Library Entertainment Committee, because we're still asking for you all to come so that we can stay in the know about what's happening and not just wait for this resolution that's going to come once a year to make sure that we're okay with the plan. I'm highly disappointed to be here today and in this place, because we don't need to be, and it was avoidable. So good luck. I'm going to continue to watch and continue to communicate and hope that this is going to get better faster. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stiles.
And that concludes our public comment.
Commissioner Wade, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your comments and your commitment to Metro Arts and being here. I'd like to move into item C, approval of the minutes. We all received these in our first packet, so if we can just take a few minutes and review these and let us know if you have any changes. I have reviewed them. I did not have any changes, but if you'd like to take a few minutes.
I do. Top of page 4, item number 3, it was Commissioner Lefkowitz who initiated the conversation about the clear outline process from the August 14th meeting, not me.
Yeah, top of page 4, where it says Commissioner Jester, under Community Engagement and Legal Review, it should be me.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
under my report, it seems to be that it's been rewritten with somebody else's words, not mine. What I said was that during our discussion, the topic of dissolving the Budget and Oversight Committee came up and should be monitored. And if it was abolished, I recommended transferring its responsibilities to another group, perhaps executive committee. I think that's what I said. You can go back to the tape. The other thing was, and I didn't say anything about transfer, I just said it needs to be looked at because budget and oversight is a very critical piece. I think it was 3 of us on the committee and 2 persons did bring that up. And there was no monitoring of any developments because I left it to whatever this body decides to do moving forward. So, but that was something I saw that needs to be corrected.
Thank you, Commissioner Watts. Vivian, can you make those corrections in the minutes? Any other corrections?
I'm noting that on the bottom of page 5 where it says there's a care update. I know we didn't have a lot to update on, but there were updates. So I just would like, maybe we can add that in and just kind of review, and I'm happy to help with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Harden. There were updates. I just rewatched it. So yeah, thank you. Vivian, can we make a note there too, please?
Yes, if we can actually move past these and not, I don't want to approve these, if legal is okay with that.
We will table this and we will make a motion to approve these next month, or actually at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to action items and discussion. Public Art Committee is up first, and I'm the chair of Public Art Committee. We had our meeting last Thursday, and I'd like Ann Leslie to speak about what we have going on. There's a lot of great projects, and I know we have an action item for today.
Good morning, or afternoon, actually, commissioners, and thank you, Chair West. I appreciate all of your time and your service on the commission. For those commissioners that I have not met yet, my name is Ann Leslie Owens. I'm the Public Art Collections Manager. Today, we are bringing a public art project. It is the one action item on the agenda. I will try to make my comments as brief as possible, as I know we have some very important grants discussion. But before I jump into the details of the Arthur Avenue project, I think it's important for you to understand the public art process and when we come to you with recommendations for the Public Art Committee and the Commission. The public art program does not work on an annual schedule like the grants program does, for example. We can't anticipate a year in advance when we will have action items to bring to you. Public art projects are typically part of larger metro construction projects. So they may start at any time, and their time frame varies. Each project has its own schedule of different lengths, and there's always a different size and complexity to the project. Members of the public art team will bring recommendations to the Public Art Committee and the Commission at key milestones. These include, in the very beginning of the project, we bring the site, the scope, and the budget to you for approval. Later on, after the community selection panel has made their recommendation, we bring that to you for approval. And then later in the project, when we have the artist design, we bring that to you for approval. Once we have those approvals, it is the public art team's responsibility to manage the project. However, as I mentioned, these are construction projects. So there are sometimes scheduling delays. Sometimes we have site changes we need to respond to, new or increased cost, or major design modifications. When this happens and changes are required to those items that you have previously approved, that's when we will come back to you. This recommendation today has to do with the artist budget and the site work budget. It was presented to the Public Art Committee last week at their meeting, and it is coming as a recommendation from the Public Art Committee. And so that you have some context for our budget increase request, I'm going to give you a very brief project recap. And so if you'll bear with me through a few slides, I think it will give you the background that you need. So Arthur Avenue, this is a public art lighting project that really started with an NEA grant, a National Endowment for the Arts grants. The project location that you see there on the right-hand side is between Elizabeth Park and Buena Vista. It is located south of Buchanan Street, north of Monroe Street. The interstate, as you know, if you've traveled this area, cuts through the historically African-American neighborhoods of North Nashville, and Arthur Avenue is one of the few connectors. The community expressed a strong interest in slowing traffic in this area, in safer crossings, and especially lighting for the Arthur Avenue underpass. It is a very large underpass, and for those of you who have traveled it, it's very low too. In 2021, Metro Arts, Nashville Department of Transportation, Project Return, and community organizer Simone Boyd were awarded a $75,000 NEA grant, with $75,000 coming as a Metro Arts match. The NEA grant ended up serving as a catalyst for a much larger public art project that better responded to the site, the scale, and the complexity of this area. Not only will it bring much needed light to this underpass, but it also reimagines this space, which for many residents is a physical reminder of the harm brought by the interstate. So here's the image. There is the artist rendering of their proposal. In November 2022, this commission approved a $400,000 artist budget and approved the $75,000 NEA public art match. That $400,000 artist budget was part of the invitational request for proposals that we put out. After a July 2023 site visit with the invited semifinalist artists, there were 4 of them, there was concern that the $400,000 artist budget was not enough based on this site and to meet community expectations. Shortly after that, NDOT, our partner on this project, committed $100,000, which was very welcome. And as a result, we increased the artist budget to $500,000. And this was in the revised RFP that we put out. So those semifinalists created proposals, and a community selection panel selected artist Alex Braden. His proposal that you see there, Be As Water, is based on that $500,000 artist budget. And we currently have a Metro contract with artist Alex Braden for $500,000. So what changed? Well, some new information came to light. In working with NDOT, we determined that their $100,000 had to be used for infrastructure cost. It couldn't be paid directly to the artist. And as we continued to talk about it, there wasn't a clean and easy way for us to pay for any of the artist costs related to infrastructure. We also continue to work on investigating the site, and as the artist design proposal has been refined, and as we have worked with TDOT, they are actually the owners of this site. You know, the interstate bridge goes above. And so that investigation and discussion has revealed some new information about the site. So what we are asking is for a budget increase, both for the artist budget from $400,000 to $500,000 from percent fund, as well as for an increase in the site work budget from $100,000 to $400,000, also from percent fund. To explain a little more about that, the artist budget, again, that was already approved, the $400,000 with the $75,000 NEA grant. That was back in November of 2022. We increased the artist budget in the RFP and correspondingly in the contract to $500,000 when we had that NDOT commitment. But it was during that MOU discussion that it became clear that NDOT's $100,000 could only be used for infrastructure cost. And let me also add that public art percent funds are bond proceeds for just for this purpose, the acquisition of artwork that comes into the Metro public art collection. It is completely separate from the grant funds for which you're going to be talking about later. And there are percent funds available. This increase is not taking away from any other current project or future projects. We are simply scaling this budget to better fit this project. So that is the first ask. And the second ask is related to the site work budget. Now, site work is something we would not normally bring to you as a recommendation for approval. In our public art guidelines, which I hope have been shared with you, it is included that site work is typically up to 20% of the artist budget. And for most projects, that works. That's enough for the project. But this project is a little different than many of the projects we work on. It is not part of a larger metro project, so we don't already have electricians, people who work on concrete. They're not already on the site. There's no way that some of these things that we need can get absorbed into the larger construction project. So all of these expenses are completely on Metro Arts and Nashville Department of Transportation. Also, the project area is very large, and in the design development stage, which we're in now, and the review and approval process with the Tennessee Department of Transportation, Metro Arts and NDOT are learning what is possible for site work and getting quotes and learning what these costs might be. So we have requested several different vendor quotes. We've only received one in, but these are for things that would never be in the artist budget. And so we were approving the commission approval of $400,000 that is, certainly greater than the standard 20%, which would be $100,000 based on a $500,000 budget. And we are asking, yes, to approve that. Even though we don't know, we are expecting that to be adequate for the expected cost. Just to give you a breakdown, this was a great question that came up in our Public Art Committee meeting. How do the budgets line up? What's included in each? The artist budget includes things like all of their fees, any subcontractors' fees that they might bring in, their engineer stamp drawings, materials fabrication, installation, travel, storage, insurance, legal, contingency fees. Whereas Metro Arts, on any project that we're a part of, we have some limited site work. A lot of times this might only have to do with concrete or bringing electrical to the site, but that is, certainly going to be more here than on some projects. We also have an opportunity to repaint as a base coat those green I-beams that NDOT did do some touch-up back in February, but the opportunity to repaint a different color would be completely up to us, and TDOT has given us preliminary approval for that, but payment for that would be completely up to us. So that's one of the larger quotes that we are expecting. So our recommendation, the Public Art Committee recommends increasing the artist budget for the Arthur Avenue Public Art Lighting Project to $500,000 from the percent fund and authorizing up to $400,000 for site work, also from the percent fund.
Thank you, Ann Leslie. Are there any questions or discussion?
I have a question. Thank you, Ann Leslie. It's good to see you. I drive under this underpass most days, and I have seen construction. I think they were possibly doing structural repairs to the bridge.
Was it just recently?
It's been over the past year or so.
Oh, okay, yes. So TDOT did do some repair work that wrapped up in February. So you probably saw that.
Okay, I knew that was something. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't what the site work is going
No,
towards.
that's
They've already-
nothing to do with the site work, but it is an important part of the project because, this NEA grant really is probably what got TDOT and what pushed them to agree to doing some of those much needed repairs.
I'm excited. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anne Marie.
I have a question or a comment about this, and given that the proposal by the mayor just recently passed for improvement in transportation and sidewalks, and I see that there's some sidewalk requests there, that while you said authorization up to $400,000 for those repairs or improvements, I am wondering if we should request some of those expenses come from the funds that will be raised through the mayor's budget and his proposal for the sidewalks and maybe some of the other matters that would be included in that $400,000. So it doesn't come necessarily from the funds that we have. And that's my suggestion.
That's a very good one, and actually Chair West brought up a similar question about that plan and if the sidewalks at Arthur Avenue are part of that. I did check with Nashville Department of Transportation, our contact Anna Dearman, and there is a plan already in place, and it does not include Arthur Avenue. So my understanding is that we would be responsible for covering that from some other funds.
Commissioner McCoy, to add to that, the rollout in the timeline of the transit plan does not fit the timeline of this project in terms of where the sidewalks are in relation to everything else. So the sidewalks in their plan, I can't speak to their office, but it's well down the road from when this project will be completed.
Yeah, we hope to install and dedicate in the spring of 2025. And it has been a project that has been a long time coming. There are elders in the community who have been wanting and waiting for this project for a long time. So I'm really excited that we'll be able to complete that in the spring.
I have a question. I think I raised this at the meeting. That is, the original budget was $150,000, and we're now, what's the projected budget for this project as we move forward?
Well, artist budget or everything?
Everything.
Okay. I would have to start, I don't have that off the top of my head. I would have to kind of start adding. But it's important to keep in mind that this NEA grant and that budget was ambitious and responded to a lot of desires for the area, but it perhaps wasn't realistic as far as, how much that budget could deliver. So I think we have begun to right size it and make it fit this very, very large site. But yes, I can certainly give a more detailed listing of the full budget if that would be helpful.
I think it's always wise to know what's happening, because we've got a number of public art projects where we've seen the original budget increase, sometimes quite significantly, sometimes not, but it should be documented or at least brought to the attention of the commissioners so that they can move forward informed and transparent way in terms of why that was done. Even though this is a procurement activity, you still need the commissioner's approval to move forward. So on the 400,000, and it wasn't clear to me what that breaks down to be. This is going to the artist for work done. Is the artist going to present a budget to cover that 400,000?
Yes, they are currently working on their fabrication budget. I mean, they presented an initial budget when their proposal came in.
That's what I thought.
So they've done that, and then, and that came to this body in November 22. And then they are updating it. Of course, when they created their initial proposal, it was all based on rather limited information. So as they have gotten more detailed information, as we've pulled in barge design and NDOT and TDOT, and they are, looking at exact fixtures and current market prices, they are creating a fabrication budget for us, which we expect very soon.
Okay. Is Simone Boyd still involved in this project or no?
Yes, she's still very much involved, but yes, not on maybe as much on the public art side, but certainly she is very interested in seeing this project to completion.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Any additional questions or comments? If not, I'd like to take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion passes. Thank you. Actually, I need to do a roll call, don't I?
Who was the second?
Commissioner Lefkowitz.
Okay, thank you.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to,
Chair West,
yes.
apologies. Since it wasn't a roll call, please ask for any opposed or abstentions.
Thank you, Tessa. Any opposed or abstentions? No? Seeing none, the motion passes. Okay, Commissioner Watts, Budget and Oversight Committee.
We have no report. We could not get a quorum. There were only 3 members to the committee, and the other 2 were not available. So it is what we had from the last meeting that really is where we were and where things are at this point. I will just emphasize that at some point, I think there needs to be probably more transparency for this body to make informed decisions, especially about budget. And I raised one during this last discussion, because there's a lot of dollars and cents that go up and down, and just help us understand how those charges come about. And I know that COVID was part of this part of the last project, but I also understand that knowing about that is real critical to commissioners fulfilling their fiduciary roles on this commission. So just FYI, just a comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Watts. We will move on to CARE and Vice Chair Harden's update.
Thank you, Chair. So CARE did not meet since our last commission meeting. We were kind of positioning ourselves to help respond to the current grant situation. We did individually reach out to all CARE members and ask them to have some attendance at the community engagement sessions that had, I think most CARE members were at least 1 or 2 of those. I think we've talked a little bit over the past week or so about trying to fit one more meeting in this year. One of the things we've been working on since I started was the equity definition, and I think that that's going to be really key, especially next year, in helping us kind of move forward a lot of different pieces of work. So I think our goal is hopefully to have another meeting this year and try to, land on an equity definition to present to commission next, January. I think we also, we would like to be involved in the grants process. I know that Mr. Tucker specifically talked about equity and how important that is. But yeah, I think we're all just kind of waiting to see what that looks like. I think these guidelines that we received recently are helpful. I think it's something tangible that we can look at, but we haven't had time to kind of do that. And personally, my challenge is I don't have an understanding of the timeline, and I want to position CARE to be productive in assisting with that, but I don't want us to be in a position where we're holding things up. And so, yeah, I think we would like to be involved in the grants process, and what that looks like exactly, I'm not sure. But I hope that, we can communicate with staff and other committee members and kind of setting up our meeting, scheduling our meeting so that we're able to respond to information that's coming out in a quick way without kind of delaying any of the process as we move into the next year. So that's a brief update for CARE. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Harden. Any questions for Vice Chair Harden on CARE? I have one. In the last grant cycle, did CARE, how did CARE participate in the grants process? Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay, just curious.
I can go back and.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to the Grants and Funding Committee. On the agenda, it's listed as facilitators, Dr. Paulette Coleman and Sydney Davis. Sydney's back. Yeah, hey. And then there's also Chair Jester. So how would we like to move forward with this?
I will go ahead and address that. Given the limited amount of time between the last public engagement session and the meeting that we had scheduled, there was some issues of expedience in getting an agenda out there in time. And so we have not had a meeting since the last one. We need to have one as quickly as possible. And I guess I would just urge everyone to, working on these documents, to please get them to us in as expedient a manner as possible so we have more time than 12 or 15 hours to read over these documents. And I'll pass it off to the facilitators on the agenda.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are here to, we're charged with coming up with some guidance as to what grants funding would look like this year. One question is, what would the allocation be? And secondly, once the allocation was determined, how would it be the process for making it in terms of operating and thrive? As we know, the grant amount for FY25 is $3.256 million. We are recommending that $900,000 be used for Thrive. The rationale for that was Thrive had previously been at $176,000, $250,000, and last year with supplemental funding, it was $908,000. Given our concern with equity, given our concern with demonstrating and showing a commitment to rectifying the well-documented disproportionate funding over the years, over the decades, this was a good point. I could not rationalize or justify making less than $900,000 available to CARES. To Thrive. As we know, the total for the Thrive ask is about $3.3 million. We start from the fact that we don't have enough money, and what do? We have, that's just kind of the context, and to help us understand where we are and how we are. There were some discussions and looking at percentages and so forth and so on, and we've tried to slice and dice the amounts as best we can, knowing that no amount is, unless there's more money, gonna make a huge difference in terms of equity. The other thing, and I've said this before, is the multiple years of disproportionate funding will not be resolved or rectified in 1 year. So this is a process, and the beginning of that process was to set a baseline to say we're not interested in going backwards, but going forward. You received and it was very short notice because we've been revising and re-revising and checking and so forth and so on. And I don't know what would be most helpful. I'm doing Thrive, and so we could look at the criteria and see if we have any questions or discussions about the criteria for funding eligibility for the Thrive projects. It's a one-sheeter. And if we go to that page, we'll see that we are expecting that Thrive projects will align with Metro Arts mission and Thrive goals by impacting neighborhoods and communities, engaging residents for their input in planning, designing, decision-making, and art-making, and then exhibiting and promoting cultural equity in project design process and content. As you know, we're still, in terms of Metro Arts and the CARES Committee, working on a definition of equity, but we have had principles that we talked about during the community engagements of being inclusive, of being impactful, of being justifiable, et cetera. Now, to receive a Thrive grant from Metro Arts, let me just stop right there. As Director Tucker pointed out, one of the challenges is for 14 years, we have been giving Thrive grants, or Thrive project funding is more accurate. And in the last several years, it has been uncovered that Metro is prohibited from giving grants to individuals, and that's why we have the problem. So the question has always been, well, we've been doing it for X number of years, why can't we do it differently? And as I always respond, once the light is shown on a particular thing that is incorrect, we all have to work hard to make it correct. A Thrive grant, in order to receive a Thrive grant, you can be an individual artist, and we have a broad definition. You must be 18 years of age, and you must live or primarily work in Davidson County. Now, one of the other kinds of decisions or considerations is sometimes there are groups of artists who want to do an activity. And artist collectives are not arts organizations, that they are organizations that do not have a 501c3. And we wanted to make sure that those kind of partnerships could be funded. Art collectives must be located in Davidson County, and they must have an artist identified as the lead in terms of the project. And then this is below, we have who or what cannot be funded for Thrive grants. Employees of Metro Davidson County, as well as Nashville Public Schools, members of the Metro Arts Board or the Public Art Committee, or a submission with immediate family or household members who are serving in these roles, elected officials, and arts organizations that hold nonprofit 501c3 status. So these are the criteria. One of the sources of needing further discussion, there was some concern during the community engagements as to why 501c3 organizations could not receive Thrive grants. And the answer is they are available to have operating grants. And the intent was to make money available to individuals and collectives of individuals. I don't know if you have questions, and feel free to chime in at any point.
I'd like to know, is that a new thing that we're talking about, excluding 501c3s from Thrive? And then whether or not we do is a different subject, but in the email we received last night, we got a document called Thrive Project Funding Guidelines, and in the Thrive Project Funding Guidelines, it specifically says this category is open to individual artists and artist teams and to nonprofit and for-profit organizations. So we need to make a decision and then make sure the documents match.
As I said, that was one of the outcomes or one of the things that came from the community engagements, and so that's something, a policy decision that this commission has to decide.
Did the working group, did this come from the working group, or what was their role in creating this criteria?
They didn't have a role, and yeah, this is the work of the staff based on our review of what has transpired previously. and we will be discussing it at the working group, but I did not interpret the working group as having a role in defining this.
Is there a history of 501c3s applying for Thrive?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I couldn't tell you how many or what proportion, but yes.
I have a question. I guess I appreciate you kind of going through this. I'm wondering how much productivity of us discussing the specific, I guess, documents are today, if it does need to go through grants committee, if I'm correct. And I guess I have more questions about just the process and the timeline of kind of what's feasible. I think it would help me if I could see it on paper, like, okay, these are the steps that we as a commission and as staff need to accomplish. These are kind of the milestones we need to hit in order to get, I guess, grants out. So I think that would be helpful if I just had a better vision of what are the steps that are going to we're going to need to, I guess, accomplish to make this possible.
Surely. Our original schedule was to have a grants committee meeting in October. As you heard, the agenda did not get posted, and I will assume responsibility for that. November, because I'm the executive director and I'm supposed to make sure that everything happens, and it did not. So I assume responsibility for that. And so now we had this committee meeting. So the question became, how do you get a grants committee meeting between the 13th and the 21st with the notice requirements? That was not possible. So here we are today, and we can figure out that we want to do a grants committee meeting, do the necessary posting, et cetera, and have it, and then we could conceivably have a call meeting. But the other thing of it is, as was pointed out, if we're trying to get this for the December council meeting, we needed to have December 2nd is when it has to go to December 2nd, December 4th, and December 6th are critical dates. And if we miss any of those, it can't go to council on, I believe it's the 17th. The other thing is we also have some requirements or some expectations in terms of Thrive and in terms of requests that came out of the community engagement, that we have another community engagement meeting that addresses what we're talking about here. And we got clarification that it doesn't have to be approved, that it can be discussed without having been approved. And so scheduling that is also important. And we can provide you with a timeline because we've done several and it wasn't working out as we had expected.
And I guess I say that from those engagement sessions, I think for Thrive specifically, the idea of a fiscal sponsorship was big, and I was curious. I know there were a lot of questions, but I hadn't seen any framework for it, so I wasn't out on it, but I did want to know more, and I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if there's any documentation.
No, we have that in our presentation.
Okay.
One of the responses with regard to how we do Thrive that makes it compliant is the notion of a fiscal agent. There were 3 propositions that we looked at. One, and this is out of the working group, and I see Director Tucker standing, so he probably wants to say something, but I want to finish this. First was one fiscal agent that would be for everybody. That was not a comfortable feeling with the working group and others who were looking at this. Another was to the members of the working group to identify prospective fiscal agents. And then the third was for organizations to choose their own. And the focus of the concentration primarily now is a pool of fiscal agents. And one of the unanticipated outcomes of the community engagements is that we were able to identify 4 potential fiscal agents. We now have a draft contract in terms of, out of the working group, their requirements, what they're expected to do. And it would go that there would be a contract between Metro government and the fiscal agent. The fiscal agent would be the contractor with Metro. There has to be somebody. The fiscal agent, once selected or made available, would then enter into a letter of agreement, also known as a memorandum of understanding, between themselves and the artist or arts collective that selected them. That would spell out the terms, how it was the funds are going to be distributed, et cetera. So that's generally the outline. As I said, there are some draft contracts that are available that are being edited as the work of the working group goes on. Did you want to recognize the register?
One question for you, Dr. Coleman, just to be clear, and then I can recognize Reverend Tucker, if that's okay with legal.
The chair can recognize.
Thank you. On the criteria that was sent out last night for Thrive, where is it reflected anything about the fiscal agency?
That's not one of the criteria. It's not reflected anywhere
It's not anywhere.
on this.
And it's not in anything that was sent out to the grants committee either, correct?
It was supposed to have been mentioned in the guidelines and maybe not. I'll check.
I didn't see
Okay,
it.
I'll check.
So how does, I guess this might be where Reverend Tucker, the working group has not had any input into the Thrive?
Well, the working group has defined the fiscal agency and produced the fiscal, I guess, is it legal produced the idea, or it was a combination? It has been discussed at the working group, yes, considerably.
I guess what I'm asking is what comes out of the working group is what we are going to be working with for the definition of Thrive. And so where is that reflected in anything from Metro Arts?
Say that again now.
Does anyone else have any suggestions on how to phrase this? I guess it's if the working group is producing and working on the definition of Thrive and what's in the legal mechanism for that to work. So it seems to me that we would need to have that information incorporated into the Metro Arts information to review.
Okay.
Commissioner West, can I speak to that? I'm back here.
So,
Right over there.
When it looks, oh, it doesn't have a thing on it? Oh, sorry. In order to answer that question, it appears to me that to receive a Thrive grant, the applicant must be blah, 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 blah. That's what it says. Your question has to be, addresses, how do we know that there's going to be a physical agent? And part of what our director said is that there are two contracts missing. One is the contract that the Thrive applicant must have with the physical agent, and that should be included, that to receive a grant, they must identify who their physical agent is, and that they will enter into a binding contract with that physical agent. It should also say that the physical agent qualifies under the provisions that have been set out, that the physical agent will enter into a contract with Metro, because it's a two-step process. Then, before we do this, we need to get Metro to say that that complies with the existing the charter, both the state law and the local law. I don't know if it does because I haven't studied it. But if we're going to do something that puts the Thrive applicants in good standing, there are two things that we need to have in our little definition. And we also get the approval of Metro Legal.
Chair West, I will say that there is a document that we didn't receive in our handouts today that we did receive in the email last night called the Thrive Project Funding Guideline, which I referenced earlier, but it does have a subheading and 4 paragraphs about fiscal agent and Thrive project funding. So it isn't part of the group of documents that we received with limited time to review, but it is addressed in the Thrive project funding guidelines. Would you like me to read those?
Thank you. No, if it's referred, then we can further discuss. And then I'd like to ask Reverend Tucker if you had a comment within this. And then I'd like to follow up about the community engagement and what came out of that regarding Thrive.
First, let me apologize because I know this is not the normal course. and I appreciate the chair for recognizing, MHRC would request to receive all this information and the rationale behind it, because we will comment on it with or without the commission's asking or not. And we want it to be something that will not create a hiccup, because we're also being asked by the council and by the chair of the Arts Committee what we think. And so if we can work together to get to that, then there won't be any hiccups. But we will respond out of the way that we feel as it relates to equity. One of the main tenets on any equity lens that one would seek to develop, transparency is one of those core principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tucker.
I don't know if we want to continue because, or in terms of after that Thrive, or if you want to go to the criteria for operations, what would make the most sense?
What other questions do we have surrounding the Thrive Like program? And then I'd like to discuss the community engagement, because we were sent a list of all the notes compiled from the community engagement, and reading through the Thrive and the ones that really stood out to me, I wanted to see how that was incorporated, because part of community engagement was to feed into the criteria and the guidelines.
Sure.
So, Commissioner Kurtz.
And I may be jumping the gun here a little bit, but I'm just curious, since we're now having this as a public conversation and Reverend Tucker is here and brings up valid points about communication, is there something that we're missing in terms of how, like, should there be a coffee meeting happening that we can get you this information with the rationale is in terms of an entity to another entity?
Well, as I said earlier, we've availed ourselves to help, and we've not received that back. And yes, whatever, coffee, depending on what time of the day. But yes, we would. We just want to be involved because we have a period interest in how you do grant funds going forward. Part of the agreement is to ensure that there's a criteria that's set up that will not infringe on what the nature of the conciliated agreement is. Because again, the parties are not all in agreement as to what should have happened. We forced ourselves into a room over 3 or 4 times, and we came out with something in good faith that we think will work. And so we're uber committed that what we do have on paper be met. There are other stipulations in that agreement. All the other timelines, everything else has been met. But what I think is one of the most critical things, rationale and the criteria and how we get to that, that can be defendable, that can stand on its own.
Thank you, Reverend Tucker. Commissioner Lefkowitz.
I don't know if this is exactly a question. Thank you, Dr. Coleman, for talking about the rationale between about the allocation, because that was my first question, and something that I thought in August that in the Grants Committee meeting in August, that the commission would decide the allocation between the proposed Thrive program and operating grants. That seems like a very significant thing, and it seems like something that the commission would want. I'll speak for my own self in terms of equity, to endorse, with a vote, to be a part of that discussion, and I'm not saying that I disagree with that number at all. I'm saying that I feel like that would have been a first step, right, for us to actually vote on that allocation before and then design around that. And so, that's more of an opinion, not really a question.
We want to discuss. We're here to discuss, so I want everyone to really discuss.
I have one more question. This is for Tessa in terms of thinking about like a grants committee meeting. And I know we haven't started talking about timelines, but I'm stuck on that from what you said, Vice Chair Harden, and thinking about what Councilwoman Stiles said about the deadline And I am committed to going in and trying to sort this. And I think the only way we can do it is if we do have a group of people together at a table and we have this nuts and bolts conversation. We have so many new commissioners. We have who need information. We can talk openly about this. At the Grants Committee meeting in October, there were commissioners there. I had a ton of questions, but that wasn't the time for the questions or not. And so I guess I'm wondering if we had a Grants Committee meeting and as many commissioners could come as could and other people could come, could it function more like a like a discussion? I know you're like, stop it, Heather. But you know what I'm saying? Like, what are the restrictions or what are the possibilities of sitting down at a table and hashing this out? Not today when we got this last night.
So in October, I limited participation from commissioners in the audience because it was publicly noticed as a Grants Committee meeting. Grants Committee is assigned a set amount of commissioners per the bylaws. It was not publicly noticed as a full commission meeting. I can creatively think through your request while still meeting the legal parameters. But ideally, if you want discussion with the full commission on an issue that is noticed as a full commission meeting.
That's what we did.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be a full commission meeting with quorum if everybody couldn't make it. We're not making decisions. We're just discussing in lieu of the Grants Committee meeting, right? If we're not making decisions, would it matter if we had a discussion and we didn't have quorum, or do we have to have quorum to just talk?
The discussion will lead to.
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
In the past, Metro Legal has opined to this body that you need quorum to deliberate towards commission business, even if no vote is taking place.
Yeah, fair.
At some point, I'm the process person, and somewhere along the way, we've got to get to a process. And that's an observation. And we've gone around this 3 or 4 different times. And we have inadvertently, through committees, delayed some things, right, wrong, or indifferent. There's the reality of where we are. Given what we say we want to do, and we've not really voted on that fully either. So these are all the things I'm just sort of throwing out here, because we start these conversations, we get halfway through, and then we never come back to finish the sentence or the conversation. I think we have to do this, and I think we have to do it soon, and that we have to have some call meetings here, whether it's a full body meeting to discuss all of this and put it in shape between now and the 1st of December, which is also another thing that sort of does that, and move this forward. The notion of equity is not as hard as most people think. All due respect to legal and what they may or may not say, it can be done. And Thrive could be moved forward. The $900,000, I heard that, I think, some of the engagement meetings and other things, and it makes sense. And at some point, if that's something we need to discuss today, I think that we need to put that on the table and see if we can approve some of that kind of language so that when we get back, we can move forward. Because I think we keep getting pieces, and I can't tell you what's been approved or not from a process standpoint.
Can I also say, in the letter I sent after the last meeting that outlined some things, I talked about data, which I've been working on with Amanda and Ashley from MHRC, and I shared it in draft form with Director Coleman and some people, but some of the numbers, we're trying to get the numbers right. But just like Ann Leslie had slides that showed kind of the things, for us, I'm a visual person. It overwhelms me to get documents, the night before with a ton of text with not context. And so we need slides and visuals to tell a story of what this is, of what we've done and what we are trying to do. Those can also be public in a way that when we're looking at documents, people who are watching can't see and don't know what we're looking at. And so just more transparency, more communication. I know it's fast. I do believe you're right and that's the right thing to do and that we can call it and do it. But I'm I'm like so willing to commit to it at this month and just have more open communication about this because it's heartbreaking to me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Lefkowitz. Yes, Commissioner Rosenblum.
I've never really spoken before, so be patient. I'm new. But so, yeah, as being a new commissioner, I really appreciate what you all are saying about I just feel like I'm kind of like trying to really work hard to get my head around all that's happening. But I do think, first of all, I hear Reverend Tucker talking about they're offering help, that yes, we need, it seems like we need help and we need time to meet and figure out a way to, I'm a business owner, roll up our sleeves and just get it done because it is breaking my heart when I think about artists and we just don't have a lot of time. And I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and do whatever is needed. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rosenblum, and welcome. Thank you. I'd like to say just a few things to get us on track a little bit. First things first, we ended the meeting last month, our commission meeting, with commissioners would be submitting questions about the grant process and what was going on. I'd like to know if commissioners had their questions answered, because this is the only time I can answer that. If you submitted questions and if you still have outstanding questions from last month. Okay.
Wait, do you want me to say something? Wait, what was your question again?
Just to make sure, we did not deliberate this last month because we decided that we would go and take our questions and then submit them, and then we would come back together this month. So that's one thing. Secondly, to Commissioner Watt's question, the commission is here to set and approve the allocations, the general operating criteria, and the Thrive Light criteria. That was not noticed in this agenda. That is not prepared to be voted on today. So I want to be really clear about that. Third is the timing issue. I've attempted in writing and other ways to talk us through the legislation deadlines with the holiday schedule. It has been very clear to me that the December 3rd council meeting all along would never have met because the finance deadline was the 18th of November. Today is the 21st. So that being said, I think it's really critical that we talk about the timeline that the staff perceives to move forward because so much of this is dependent on that. And with us having the MHRC deadline of January 6th, and you look at the next council meeting in January, that is the 7th. So, no, sorry, is that not the
17th or 20th?
17th?
It's way down. Isn't it the 17th?
Correct.
December 17th, and then we move into January.
Yes.
January 20th, 21st.
January 21st.
So that would be the next meeting. Okay.
Correct.
So to look at the December 17th date, to back that out, I would like us to discuss the reality of getting this to move through everything in time to file with finance on the 2nd, legal on the 4th, and the filing council deadline on the 6th. I've put this out to you and Sydney, and I would like to I think that's kind of what everybody's kind of looking at is the timeline and what can we do to move this forward. Commissioner Lefkowitz.
I just to the question about the questions, I always have lots of questions because that's my problem in life is that I have my role is I have lots of questions. And I did submit, I know it was an overwhelming number of questions. It was 15. I did not get responses from my emails requesting responses. I was copied on, Dr. Coleman copied me on other responses to other people. I know it's time intensive in terms of asking someone to respond to 15 of my questions. I get that. I also know that my schedule is terrible and it's hard for me to just meet and have a call. So I acknowledge that. But I still have a bunch of questions that I'm not clear on whether I got the answers or not, or I wasn't able to clearly find them.
Commissioner Lefkowitz, I responded to your questions. I did not respond to them immediately. I think it's a 5-page single-space document, and I can go back through my emails and resend it if I need to. It should have been because it was almost close to a month before I responded. You're exactly right. And
No, yeah. Can you send it to me, please?
I will be more than happy to do that. I don't have my computer and my phone isn't connected.
To make the most of our time, we have 40 minutes left in this meeting. And we have several things to get through. There are no action items that we can vote on today for grants. To continue with procedure, I have asked when a grants meeting is being rescheduled. I have not been told that. So I'd like to kind of know where we are moving forward. And I believe legal received documents last night as well, like we did, and then Monday evening. So can we kind of speak to process maybe once more to kind of get everybody to speed on what we need to do moving forward?
Yeah, so I'm going to be as straightforward as I can with process. With the chair's permission, I am going to add a little bit of dialogue in regarding the conciliation agreement, because the conciliation agreement does inform this process.
That's
So
what I need.
So just for the general commission's understanding, I know I've explained this to specific commissioners. I'm not sure if that information was distributed to the full commission. When there's a filing deadline with the Metro Council office, there are backdated filing deadlines with other various Metro offices. One being legal has a filing deadline, because when legal files legislation, it goes to the mayor on a report that the mayor needs to review before we file it with the council office. The second deadline is going to be the deadline to get it to finance. Any allocation of funds, any spending of Metro money has to be reviewed and signed off on by finance. And so typically the finance deadline is close of business on the Monday prior to the council filing deadline. The Metro legal deadline is then the Wednesday prior to the council filing deadline. And so I just want to make sure that we have a shared understanding on what Chair West and Dr. Coleman are speaking about when we're saying these deadlines. This seems like it's in the nitty gritty, but it is very important when we look at scheduling a public meeting, and then the time frame to develop a document, aka the resolution that would be associated with this criteria. And not only are there these deadlines, internal Metro deadlines, for me to develop a piece of legislation, generally I have to have the finalized supporting document for that legislation, because that informs what I put in the legislation, that informs council on what they're voting on. In this situation, I have prepped legislation based on what I believe will come out of this. And so some of that work is done. However, there is also administrative requirements within legal and Metro to put together a legislative packet. And that is done by our administrative support personnel. Again, this can be rushed, but generally Metro Legal asks for at least a day or two to make this happen. Saying all of that, and I hope that provides some context to this, to get something filed on with Metro Finance, a backwards plan deadline on Monday the 2nd, December 2nd, a decision from this commission, the committee, grants committee, makes a vote and it makes a recommendation to the full commission. Again, next week we have holidays. Essentially, anything that would need to go via resolution, the criteria, Thrive, et cetera, would need to be voted and approved on no later than the 27th of November. Now, I say that because we also have to comply with the Open Meetings Act, right? And Metro Code. Open Meeting Act requires 48 hours notice, publicly notice agenda items. Additionally, the Metro Code bakes in essentially more time, right? We want to be more transparent than the bare minimum. And so legal has opined that an agenda and a meeting must be noticed the Friday before on the website. Okay, so even if we say we're going to have a meeting on the 27th, that needs to be noticed by tomorrow on the Metro website. So has this helped define the timelines that we're looking at and clarify the true urgency of where we're at? Okay. And again, I'm not trying to be over-explanatory. This is the point of privilege I do want to take, is give the conciliation agreement asks for in fact, demands public feedback, public commentary. I believe, as your lawyer, there needs to be discussion with MHRC on whether they view the public feedback that we have received and the public engagement that has been done as sufficient under the conciliation agreement. Because it talks about a collaborative nature. The word collaborative is not defined in the conciliation agreement. It is open for interpretation. I cannot speak to MHRC's idea of what collaboration is and whether or not that has been met, or whether the intent of the public engagement has been met. I will say the working group, the Thrive working group, has had discussion on whether or not the public engagement has been sufficient to fully inform the working group going forward. And so I bring up that point about the conciliation agreement because if it is determined that more public engagement is required, bluntly, there's not enough days before now and the holidays. Obviously, public engagement can be creative. There can be online, there can be surveys, there can be FAQs, question and answers in different formats. But I did want to take that point of privilege because it does inform the procedural timeline.
Thank you, Tessa. It absolutely does inform the timeline. Does that help everyone understand timeline a little bit better, where we are in the urgency of this? Thank you.
Sorry, can I just clarify? We would need to have a committee meeting and a commission meeting on the 27th, probably. Is that correct?
And both of them noticed by tomorrow.
Right. The other question is, if finding out from MHRC if we've met community engagement, because if they don't think we have, then it seems like that's important to know.
How is the best way for us to find out? Actually, Dr. Coleman, maybe we should ask, what is the best way for your communication or the department's communication and MHRC, or to MHRC, what is the best way that we know that the community the community engagement has met those standards?
I can talk to them. I can talk to Dr. Tucker, Reverend Tucker, and Ashley.
Thank you. If I'm hearing everything correctly, I just want to put it out. If there's been difficulty with communication so far, what can we do to improve that communication?
We can speak to our position around it now.
Okay, yeah.
The chair can recognize Ashley. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I think the letter that we sent, I think November 8th was the date. What we said at the time was recognizing that the community engagement events came together very quickly, doing what could be done on that short timeline, appreciating the hustle, I'll say, that was put in to make those happen. I think in an ideal world that could have been structured a little differently. I think that there were some guiding questions that could have been that I'm not sure we got answers to, sort of specific questions that were developed to solicit specific types of feedback from attendees who attended those meetings. And so I think that's like an opportunity that could sort of be fleshed out a little bit more. I think we haven't received an update about what's being done with the information that was compiled there. What was sort of identified as helpful information, what was identified as something that could have actions developed out of it, or how do you incorporate that into the decisions before you? So we haven't received an update on that. I'll also say, I think community engagement, how how it's structured, what the goals are, and what the desired outcomes are really reliant on a solid understanding of what came before. And so I think there are lots of community members who participated, for example, in the public editing panels over the last couple of years that could be drawn on their expertise to make sure that you as commissioners, to make sure that staff who didn't go through those processes themselves really understand the rationale behind what came before. And so I think that if community members are willing to share their expertise and their knowledge of what they went through, because the editing panels and the policies that were developed were always meant to be improved, iterative, year after year, right? The implementation of them did not go smoothly. I don't need to tell you that, right? So there was always like an understanding that these community engaged processes improve year after year, right? And so I think that there is opportunities to sort of use those human resources to help in this moment as well. I don't know if that answers the question, but here to talk more.
Thank you, Ashley. 1 second, I'll call on Commissioner Jester, and then I think it was Commissioner Lefkowitz, anybody on this end. To pick up on what Ashley said, maybe this could be an easy question to be answered, is in all of the community engagement notes that were compiled, has that been incorporated? What did y'all see that was jumping out at you that was changed? Because I went through the notes that were sent out, and I saw several things that I would like to know if they were taken into consideration and how that was, both on Thrive and operating grants. So can you speak to that?
Yes, we took the notes that were compiled and the Chuck's team, community engagement, went through and picked out themes, and they talked about the themes, we looked at them, talked about them, and if there was any relevance, we could incorporate it. I can't tell you off my head what was put in there that came directly from there, but these are some of the themes. There was a whole discussion about what amount would be appropriate for Thrive grants. And one of the things that we have concluded is $20,000, given what we have, is not something we can promote or support or put forward. We also looked at, what is the maximum number of Thrive applicants, which are numbering, I believe, 201, 202, can we support? And the model that we came up with, what I have said is it doesn't matter what model we come up with, because some people believe that equity only happens as everybody gets what they want, and that's unrealistic. We came up with funding everybody at some level, all of the Thrive people, and the maximum amount was $5,000, which is consistent with Thrive or individual artist grants that exist in Tennessee and some that exist other places as well. And then they went all the way down to $480. And the question becomes, is that even worth it if you've got to get a fiscal agent and they may charge a fee, et cetera. So those were some of the ways in which the conversation was incorporated into our thinking about Thrive. Our thinking was really informed by we want to give everybody something, because no matter what we do, nobody's going to get what they want. And that's basically one of the major learnings from that. And I think another learning was that there was some concern about fiscal agency, just generally, and what could we do to make that process more accommodating and more welcoming for applicants for whom this would be new. And one of the things we were hoping to do next week was that to at least finalize the fiscal agents that we were going to move forward with, knowing that now that they have some definitive requirements and responsibilities that some of them made very clear. The only thing they wanted to do was cut the check, nothing else. That leaves out things about reporting, that leaves out other kinds of things that came out of the work of the definition of what the letter of agreement and the other the contracting letters. So those were, I can't tell you line by line, item by item, but we did not ignore the themes that emerged from the working group. I'm sorry, the community engagement. And I can say, and I think this is very important to point out, we had approximately 120 in the 3 sessions that were, 2 were in person and 1 was virtual. We sent out a survey to 335 individuals from our list of Thrive and operating applicants and to the panelists. We also posted it on our survey. We got 6 responses and 16 people made comments on the forms available at the in-person community meetings. So we can do anything you want us to do. The clock is ticking. We don't control the clock. We don't control the money. So whatever works best, and yes, we have been working on a timeline and we had to change it because everything was premised on October. So however you want us to proceed, we will be willing to proceed.
Commissioner Jester?
I'd like to know the answer to the question why there hasn't been a free flow of information between Metro Arts and MHRC. I'm not sure it's worth asking because it's all in the past, but please, can we make sure that there's a free flow of information between MHRC and Metro Arts moving forward in whatever way it needs to happen, whether it's email or getting together for good. But I don't know why that hasn't happened. That boggles me.
Madam Chair, I was going to say something along the lines of Commissioner Jester. It has been alluded to, talked around, people not communicating. I'm not going to ask who that person is, but you're probably in this room and you can hear the sense of urgency and where we are. And I just want the record to reflect, this is the only softball that's going to be thrown around communicating and responding to emails. The only softball that will be thrown. And I hope that's very clear. Thank you.
Commissioner Lefkowitz?
Were we all sent the, I couldn't find the feedback from the information session or the community engagement sessions. Was MHRC sent the feedback from the community engagement sessions?
Yes.
You were.
Is it?
I will say I received it when I asked for it. So, I learned that there was a survey because I heard about it from other people. And so there is communication, but I don't feel like it is, proactively coming to us per se. And so I think that we can certainly improve that. We are here to help. I think I named some of the missed opportunities that would help in this process. I can share more detail. And yeah, so I'm providing feedback, maybe not necessarily because I'm being asked to, but because, for example, I provided feedback on the survey when I saw that the survey was published, but not proactively coming to us for that, for example.
She's the nice one. We're not asking for the ability to approve, but we're saying that if we do not agree, we will protest. And we will do that at the respective levels in Metro, which would be disruptive to the process. And so, no, we're not getting it up front, nor are we being involved in what some of the stuff going forward might be that we still may have an objection to. Our only goal here, and everything that we may object to will be tied to the conciliated agreement. That's it. It's not about your business. It's not about your policies. It's not about how you conduct what you do, but it is the conciliated agreement.
Thank you both. Commissioner Kurtz?
Sorry, and thank you, Reverend Tucker, for those comments. And I think that many of us around this table have do work or have worked in a setting where it's either collaborative and it works really well, or everybody works in silos. And the working in silos, I can tell you, does not work. It is not a way to get anything done. And I think that's what we're a little bit seeing right now. And so, anyway, I just wanted to note that as well.
Well noted. Commissioner Wade?
I have just a couple of questions. In hearing all this information and really wanting us to get to brass tacks, relative to the January 6th MHRC deadline, what is our realistic timeline? It's not realistic that we are going to do anything or get any of these things done by next Wednesday. So is it possible for us to have the working meeting, including MHRC, including the community, including the things that the folks who have already done work that Ashley mentioned, that really is an opportunity for us to get this done, because we really are dancing around this. We keep regurgitating this information, and can we get to a very real timeline based upon what needs to happen relative to the January 6th deadline? And if we can't, then let's just say that.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, we really need to get it done by next Wednesday. I'm not sure that we are using this time well if we aren't doing that. And I don't know legally what that looks like or how that can happen, but I really would appreciate it if we just work back from January 6th. Can we get a whiteboard? Can we get a piece of paper that says, okay, if January 6th is drop dead, then December 31st, let's do X, Y, or Z. The day before Christmas, hopefully not, but the day before Christmas, let's do X, Y, or Z. But can we please?
I absolutely could not agree with you more. I've been asking, and this is, again, what we've got to focus on. But I think you were addressing a question to legal. Was that
I'm addressing a question to the body.
The body.
And I say that because I'm not interested in pinpointing who didn't do, when, where, et cetera. Here we are today. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what the date is. 21st of November. Here we are on the 21st of November. Let's look at January 6th and look at our calendars and put out whatever notices need to be put out for whatever dates we come up with in here today, so that we can begin to get this work done and have all of the people in the room, so that we can make decisions and progress. I'm hopeful that that can really be done.
Let me throw a question out here, and this is for legal, because if we're looking at a date of January the 6th, if we're looking, and we've got some other issues. One is the council meetings and stuff for January. What are some other timelines must we meet between now and December 31st to make December 31st a real date where something can come out, or literally at least the 3rd of January? I think that's a real work day. I don't know anymore. But somewhere along the way, we got to have all of those laid out. One of the things I've seen is we hear we're going to do something by this date, but the subsequent dates are never laid out because I've never heard them. Therein lies the dilemma for getting work done. Can we do something by next week, Wednesday? See, I was a person that ran an agency, said, yeah, because we can do this, and this. I figured out how to do it, but I'm not the staff. So the question is, can staff do that? That's the question we need to ask too, because that's a relevant question for getting things done. If we're going to do a January 6th, then we just need to decide that and look at a timeline to get those done. But there's subsequent dates, I'm almost certain, that need to be met for finance and other things that will need to be filed subsequently. So we can't just lay a date out there, because government is layered. So I just want us to make sure we understand that moving forward.
So I appreciate you putting that on the record, and certainly don't hear me say that let's just throw a date out. Those in this timeline is included all of those pieces, all of the things that I can't keep up with, that Tessa keeps up with, that whoever is the liaison to the council keeps up with. I don't know all of those dates, but that is what needs to happen in the next 35, 45 days. All of those pieces, absolutely. I was not at all suggesting let's just pick one out of the air.
No, I just want to put it on the record. See, I hear you, but I want to put it on the record today so we can go back and see it on the tape. I'm one of those people.
Chair West, I think the answer to your question is, unfortunately, what our legal counsel just laid out for us. So the date in January is incumbent on everything happening
by next Wednesday.
To be clear, the January 6th date is the it's our conciliation.
That's the conciliation
That's our
deadline date. No, I know, but in order to,
Conciliation.
we even are late on that date at this point, so.
I've inquired as to if we don't meet that date. I do not know what happens.
I know that every time MHRC has been before us, they've talked about coming to us in goodwill, and I just hope that doesn't run out.
It seems to me we need to post the meeting for the 27th. And we need to decide what the content of that meeting needs to be. Then we need to work out the calendar, because we did not work the calendar past that, because I didn't know what was going to happen today in terms of, so that to me, because it's, you can cancel, but you can't repost if you've passed the deadlines.
I guess, Tessa, yes.
I just want to make sure that we're all clear. We're speaking about the January 6th deadline because on page 8 of the conciliation agreement, right above G, if you have it in front of you, if you don't, I'm going to read it. On or before January 6th, 2025, Metro Arts shall finalize and publish new grant policies. To do that, per the Metro Code, grant criteria has to be approved by the Metro Council, which is why I have been stressing Metro Council dates. And so if we don't get criteria filed with the Metro Council by December 2nd, which is the finance deadline, the next council meeting is January 21st, which is after the January 6th deadline. And therefore, Metro Arts will not have new grant guidelines published.
I briefly want to, I don't mean to be pessimistic about this, but I do briefly want to bring up Councilwoman Stiles' comments about the current status of and how she perceives that will be received at council. And she strongly suggests that she would want to defer it at this moment. So I think it's good that we're working. I do think we should continue to meet, regardless of whether or not we're going to be able to meet that deadline. I think us showing the urgency to meet next week is probably necessary, regardless of whether or not that's realistic. But I just wanted to reiterate that and make sure that we're thinking about that too. So, we're not just like trying to race and do the work very quickly when we've already been advised that maybe it's not ready for council. So I just want to put that out there.
And please keep in mind that we are speaking of Thrive and general operating to be run through concurrently at the same time. Yeah. This body still needs to make the allocations between Thrive-like programs and general operating, along with the criteria for both. So just that goes into. Reverend Tucker?
The council piece was part of the conciliated agreement too, to put a stopgap that in the future, it'll always get raised up, at least in front of that financial appropriating body. We're already in our own internal discussions anticipating that this date will be breached too, which will be the second one, which would require that we do some type of amendment or something to the agreement. So we're thinking about that. We're even beginning to try to create what that conversation's going to be like, because it's going to bring all the lawyers back to the table. If this date is shot by, then we have a duty to Nashville. We have a duty to the arts system, and we have a duty, and I have a personal responsibility to my commission, who's been very, very adamant about this. So to your question there, that's where we are, and again, we are even anticipating that may be a reality because of the time frame that we are in right now.
Thank you, Director Tucker. I am concerned that we are at 10 minutes until 2. We have not moved into any general operating conversation at all, and I feel like we might be coming out of this meeting as we did last meeting. And so are there any other questions specifically regarding any of this timeline.
We're going to call the meeting.
I guess I have a request of staff, if possible. If we could just get a list of those milestones, like, so we can think about them and come prepared if we're meeting next week.
Milestones in terms of what we need to meet.
Yes.
I've emailed that over to Dr. Coleman and Ms. Davis, and you're happy to send that back out to anyone. I mean, if assuming it's correct, I'd backed it out, but that's really up to legal because I can't send that directly to.
I just think it would help us be productive and.
I do too. Can we get that by end of day?
I think so. I have it. Yeah.
Or tomorrow?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And so we are going to call the meeting for Wednesday.
Is it legal for me to ask? It's the day before Thanksgiving. It's a travel day. I'm supposed to be on the road. I will cancel my trip and be here. I want to know who else would actually be here and what work will be done by the staff between now and Wednesday and what that looks like, because I don't want to bring everyone back here to do the exact same thing.
Chair West, if we call a meeting on Wednesday of the commission, we need to call a meeting of the Grants and Funding Committee on Monday or Tuesday. And I think the question that Trey raised earlier still needs to be answered about this, even if we do this Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'll be here and I'm willing to show up and we can do it. Are we still going to be in a position where council members feel the need to defer because we haven't taken the time to do this in a fashion? If I heard Ms. Batchelder's comments correctly, I think it would be MHRC's position that we haven't engaged the public in a robust enough manner. And so we have that to contend with too. So I'm here. I'll chair a grants meeting. I'll come to a commission meeting. I'm concerned that will be for naught again.
And going by process, the grants meeting does need to happen prior to the commission meeting. And a lot of this work, I'm going to just continue to emphasize this. The committees are so important. The work has got to be done in committee to bring it to this full body. And so if this went to committee, to grants committee, next, let's see, today's Thursday, so Monday or Tuesday of next week, what work would be presented to the grants committee that gives legal the time and finance the time that the grants committee could then come out and bring something to us the very next day to approve allocation criteria for general operating and criteria for Thrive. Is that accurately represented?
Yes.
Thank you. I think that is truly a staff question of, what is it that, coming into grants committee, what we need going into that, the timeline between now and then. I'm still looking at the community engagement and would love more information about what was actually brought in to both the general operating and the Thrive guidelines, because I have lots of questions about general operating, and so and just how decisions were made. And since we didn't have the grants meeting, those questions were not able to be answered. I think it also goes back to timelines of when we all get information. When we get information last night and coming in today, that is not enough time to bring anything in. Dr. Coleman and I have discussed that, but it just continues making this window smaller and smaller. And I think for us, it makes all of our window of tolerance get smaller and smaller. And so I want to try to move that along as well as possible. But I'm not feeling confident about the filing deadlines for December 17th, to be honest.
To Ashley's point about community feedback too, I have some of that. We've received public comment before that is in our shared drive about the community engagement process. And I can collaborate with her to make sure that we have all of that. So that could provide some written, feedback on what has already been. I can also share my slides by next week I'm finally with Amanda, just, whatever. And I'm happy to try and slide up some of this if that would be helpful. Although I don't think I'm probably the best person to do that because I didn't write it. So, but I can provide that historical background.
Thank you, Commissioner Lefkowitz.
We have criteria for operating and thrive here. If that's unacceptable, I need to know what we need to do differently, because that's what we're bringing to be considered. We also have we have slides about what operating and thrive would be. So I'm just trying to figure out, how do we need to convey it, because it seems to be that there's a suspicion that if we call another meeting, there won't be anything substantive to take place. And I'm just trying to understand, what is the substance that we need to do that's different from what we've done?
Now is the time for us to be looking at the criteria and looking at the guideline. That is the time now to be doing that. And that's part of this reading.
Well, and some of the questions I had related to, like, it looks like we've got some pieces and parts here, but not the conclusion. So it looks like here's the criteria for the artists. Like you had questions about the fiscal agent and what their actual roles were and what accountability they had. And then also, once the funds are paid out, what happens? And I don't think I really saw that addressed either. And if we're going to have guidelines, then shouldn't it conclude with what happens after the funds are paid out?
I have a question about, there are grants guidelines that are posted on our website now. So people have already applied for these operating grants last, whatever, was it February 1st, January? There are grant guidelines that are posted there. I wanted to know what was kind of, those guidelines had been through some kind of community engagement before. I'm not saying they're perfect. But my question has always been, why could those guidelines not be scaled to this year? They're there, they're posted, and they could be scaled. I asked Amanda, I think she indicated, she's not here, I don't want to speak. I'm almost sure she said that, yeah, she's watching. Okay, send me a telepathic message if I'm wrong. But, so I don't understand why those guidelines weren't considered or used, because they're there and people applied using those. So that was one of my fundamental questions that I submitted last time, and yeah.
Well, I will say again that the email that went out last night does include a guidelines package that was not in the package that was sitting in front of us today that does answer some of those questions. And I would very much ask that if we do schedule a grants meeting, that all the documentation that's necessary be in front of us for discussion. But the email last night does have some of the information you're talking about. But, you know, it was a soccer game until 9 o'clock last night, so.
Thank you, Commissioner Jester. So I think we're at a place of, it is 2 o'clock. Vivian, is the room filling in soon? I don't want to hold us over much longer. We do have in front of us the criterias that were put forward. I can ask a question in the criteria on Thrive that you were speaking to. I was confused. In this scenario that is being put forth, are the caps now changing to $5,000 max? And who made that decision?
Staff made that decision as a recommendation to the grants committee. We looked at the amount of money that we had, and the underpinning philosophically is that everybody should get something. Now, if that's a bad approach, fine, we can change it.
That's a new approach. That's something new to me, is hearing that sitting here. And that is new. Did that come out of feedback from community engagement?
That came back from all the work that we've done, reviewing what happened in the past and realizing that we only had $900,000. We also did a scenario where we scored and rank ordered, and when the money ran out, that's when, of the 200 and some odd applications. I think it's 154 that requested $20,000.
Okay. I was not under the assumption that we were funding everyone that had applied. That's not an assumption that I ever made. And this being a staff decision, this actually rolls to the commission. It is not on the agenda today. We cannot vote on this, but we can discuss it. That is not something that's, again, brand new to me. The thing that I heard last from, because I did attend community engagement online and I watched all three, that never seemed to have come up. And this is the first time have y'all discussed this in grants committee, Commissioner Dusher? No. So this was just this is a decision of staff being Ms. Davis and you, Dr. Coleman. Y'all made this decision. Okay.
Well, it's a recommendation to the committee and to the commission.
Thank you for the
I
recommendation.
mean, we had to have something to present to you, or people would be upset that we don't have anything to work on.
I'm just surprised in the change from the 20,000 to the 5 and how that was kind of leveled out. So this is, I think, more of an example of how we really need to work through these numbers because the
Sure,
math ain't
Madam
math.
Chair, can I ask a question of the staff, please?
Yes.
Dr. Coleman, are you able to present this at the grants committee meeting for consideration? If it is posted for Tuesday, for them to make a decision, because that really is how the process should work. And then come back to this body, which means we're meeting next week if we can get enough folks, because we stopped short of deciding who would be here or not. We didn't get there all the way, so we need to figure that out, whether or not we have a quorum. But can that be done? Because it sounds like you all have details and issues that might be able to be provided to the grants committee for their consideration and approval of any recommendations from staff.
Yeah, we worked on, again, the recommendation was 900,000 and then 235.
But it needs to go to the grants committee
Yes.
first. The question is, can it go to grants? Is it prepared? Is you ready to go to grants committee next week for consideration?
Yes, if they just want the criteria and the projections, yes, we have that now.
Is the staff ready to have a conversation with the grants committee about where the origination of all of this came from, where the backup is for this, where the backup for your recommendations for the allocations for the criteria? Questions like I just had, how did it go from 20 to 5 on cap? Are those questions ready, do you think, to be answered?
I don't know what you mean in terms of backup. We looked at the amount of money that we had. I took the philosophical underpinning was wanted to get money to as many people as possible. And therefore, we had $5,000 would enable us to give 150 people 25% of their ask. And then we scaled it down based on the ask. Now, I don't have any other documentation than that. And the fact that the Arts Memphis, which does give individual grants, is maxed at $5,000. And even the fellowship program at the Tennessee Arts Commission is maxed at $5,000.
And just to be clear, when we're speaking about Arts Memphis, that's nonprofit.
Exactly.
I worked there, so yes,
and
and 5,000 on Tennessee Arts Commission. They are awarded by genre. It's maxed out by genre. 5,000, I believe it's one award per genre per year. So actually, they're funding 3 to 5 artists per year. Correct?
Correct.
I'd like to say something about this whole process, and that is we have asked a tremendous amount from our staff, and we only have, as far as I know, one person on the staff dedicated to the grant process. We have an interim director who has been handling quite a bit. I don't know if the conciliation agreement actually addresses what to do about giving money to entities or individuals not associated with a 501c3, which is required by law. You can't just give money away. And so I will ask legal, how did the conciliation agreement resolve the matter of giving money to individuals?
The conciliation agreement does not expressly resolve the matter of giving money to individuals. It develops the Thrive Working Group with a mandate to look at the Thrive program, develop a new program as close to what we currently have, to look at different scenarios to see if there is a legal way to give money directly to individuals. If not, come up with other scenarios to present to this commission for a policy decision on how Thrive will progress, at least for this fiscal year, with an additional ask to develop future guidance.
All right, now, I still have the floor. I don't think it's fair for us to put it on the interim director to devise something that the conciliation agreement never addressed. She is not the one responsible for figuring out how to make giving money to individuals legal. And if we give money to individuals in contravention of existing law right now, there's going to be somebody else who's threatening a lawsuit against Metro. I have no doubt about that. All you have to do is look at the environment.
Thank you. This is the working group we're talking about, and Dr. Coleman is part of the working group.
She's not the working group.
She's the Metro Arts representative.
And what she said is, here's what I have drafted. I've drafted this. The grants committee, to my knowledge, didn't meet because of whatever the requirements were. This is the best effort for the moment. This isn't final. And I really do think that we need to take into consideration some of what came last night or whenever it was from the public hearings that talked about fiscal agents. That's the first hint that I've heard of how to make something work. I don't know what a fiscal agent's qualifications are. I don't know what their background would be, but you've got to have accountability if you're giving away public funds. That's been my whole echo.
That is exactly what the working group is working on, the mechanism for that. And it's fiscal agent. So the fiscal agent would be the mechanism.
It would be a mechanism, and it needs to be in the definition, but I don't think one person can tell you what that definition is.
Can I please make a point of legal clarity real quick?
Please, Tessa.
The conciliation agreement asks that the working group, first of all, it mandates the establishment of the working group. Additionally, the charge to the working group is identify a mechanism that complies with applicable laws for the distribution of future Thrive-like grants to individuals and independent artists. So I don't want to say that I misspoke and said it didn't mandate it. However, again, we get back to some words that are ambiguous. A Thrive-like grant to an individual. It then necessitates, if necessary, draft legislation to submit to the Metro Council to codify a lawful funding mechanism for grants to individuals and independent artists consistent with the goals of the expiring Thrive program. I wanted to read that to this commission because I can unequivocally say that this has been the primary goal of the Thrive Working Group, and that this is a bifurcated process because we are trying to find a legal way to get money to individuals while exploring legislation and other programs which possibly would eliminate the fiscal agent going forward. But the fiscal agent idea is the proposal out of the Thrive Working Group for this fiscal year. And there are developed documents on what the fiscal agency agreement would look like. I wrote one of them. They have been written by Metro Legal. They are fairly specific. They have been reviewed by the working group and are still being reviewed by the working group. And obviously those documents will come before this commission for review, commentary, and approval. Does that kind of clear up some of the discussion we've been having the past few minutes? And I apologize, Director Tucker, for interrupting.
That's fine. But Madam Chair, if I could just say to the commissioners, the agreement, as Tessa just outlined, does say to keep Thrive at our Thrive type program. Some of you may not know, but in the early conversations around what resulted in the Title VI complaint, there was a desire because Thrive suddenly was allocated a larger percentage of the funds historically. So for those who didn't find that to be suitable, there was a push to kill Thrive, which would have basically maintained the status quo. So as Tessa just said, inherent in the agreement is the intent to save, thrive, or thrive type program. And that's what the parties, Metro Legal, MHRC, hopefully Metro Arts, Metro Finance, have been working diligently toward doing. I just wanted to clear that up.
It's a simple process of asking the Metro Council to approve the Thrive grants and let them put their imprimatur on the fact that they are giving a one-time pass with regards to the existing case law, that they will say, we are doing this fully aware that 501c3 is what we have required in the past, but this has been submitted to us on a one-time basis, and give the council and Metro Arts time to revise the language if they want to change it in the code so that it won't be a 501c3. I don't have any problem with that. If they just want to give money to individuals, that's fine too. But it has to be with the blessing of the Metro Council and full knowledge that what they have existing right now
Commissioner.
doesn't say that.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. I think that reviewing what's on the website, the other contracts, and then we can continue this conversation if you need to with staff or with legal. But I think we need to move on from this at this point. Can I ask everyone what your availability, show of hands, who is in town on Wednesday, the 27th?
I'll bring the turkey.
Depends on the time. Okay. So there's that. And then for grants, 8 for quorum.
That's what we need to really know.
And I'll stay in it's fine. Yeah, but if you can be here. And then for grants, I'm just looking at dates.
Was that 8 are available for the 27th?
Chair West, can I say something else real quick?
Yes, because I really want to think about what happens if we miss this deadline.
I know we've put,
I'd really like to talk about what happens if we miss this deadline. I want to put it out there and just have the backup to discuss it on record.
yeah, and to that end, I still think we haven't addressed, we've put MHRC on the spot a lot today, but we still haven't addressed whether the public engagement that's taken place is nearly enough for MHRC's satisfaction. And if it's not, and it doesn't sound like it was, all of this is for naught anyway. So I don't particularly want to put you on the spot more. I mean, she's already said no, so.
Yeah.
Before Reverend Tucker speaks, I think we need to make a decision based on what we want to do. And we need to move forward. Now, if Metro Arts can't, if MHRC can't get back to us, or if they can, I think we need to make a forward movement about what we're going to do as Metro Arts. And I think, we keep going back to what MHRC thinks, and I know I would like to hear this, but we've got to move forward and see if we have enough. And if we don't, they'll tell us. It's good faith effort. I think we need to move on at this point. I really do. So what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And whatever we come up with, will it get us to where we need to be or as close as possible? So good faith is one of those elements that people always look for in these kind of issues in every complaint I've ever done.
I can't speak to what the good faith inclusion would be in this
I can tell you if you just want me to.
Well, I can tell you.
1 second, please. But I do agree that this is for us to decide as a commission. And that, again, my point is coming together again in a few days and then the next day. Is that realistic to not have a continued repeat? Because we're here today to get our questions answered about the meat of these things. We've only addressed Thrive. We haven't even gotten to operating. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I'm sitting. And then again, the question of if this is missed. It's just on the record. Commissioner, you.
I'm trying to talk.
Laryngitis, that's right.
Laryngitis. But I have some things to say. I was in one of the engagement meetings, and And I remember Dr. Coleman and Ms. Davis show a presentation with as proposal, as somebody was saying, giving ideas and numbers of just for the 2025. That is what I remember, just for this period of time, because everything is been fast and we don't have enough time. That is what I remember of that meeting. And also, I agree that we can use that proposal that the MetroArts staff put together for us to say review it and then ask those questions that we had about the Thrive, of the other fundings, because they had it done already, and we just need to review it together or the grants committee in order to move on, because we're just going around and around, and we have ideas, we have many, but we don't have the time. My thinking is is to remind everybody that this proposal that I remember is just for 2025, because in the meantime, next year we're gonna keep working for the formal or more legal or professional guidelines for grants and for the rest of the future of the MetroArts grants. That is what I understand, and I will propose that moving on, taking this presentation and all the information that Dr. Coleman and Ms. Davis show also to the public in those community engagement meetings, I saw the people coming together and see the numbers, not just like seeing the real things. And it's the public who talk and also gave ideas and said yes, maybe or not. I think that is important to hear from the community, not just from us. They are telling us you're going into the right way or not. I don't like this. But I don't know if those meetings were recorded or not, but the team of Chalk and the MetroArts have all of that. So that will help us and help Dr. Tucker with the information that is missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Yu. So for the will of the commission, we need to know about grants meeting first and then following that up. And if I'll also toss this to Tessa, does that give, if we meet again after grants, does that give enough time for anything, let's say, that comes out of grants? Let's say there's changes to the criteria, that there's the grant, that they're going to make recommendations for changes, and they bring that to us on the 27th. That then needs to go back to legal, correct?
Yes, it would need a final legal review, a final sufficiency legal review. Also, in the past, you have asked for a finance review.
Yes, that was exactly it. So we've got three things here, and I'm still not seeing how the date of the 27th, 6 days from now, is going to meet all of this. But I really want to hear from everyone. It's not Michael.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I need to understand if this criteria, we don't have any other criteria. If this should be differently, how will we know that so that we could even change it between now and the 27th? That's one thing. We've got the criteria for those two. Then, what was the other thing? I think it was criteria, allocation requests. We've made the recommendation that we're going to make. I'm not sure what kind of background information or whatever is needed.
It was not included on the agenda today for a vote.
Right. But I'm just asking, I, like all of you, don't want the 27th to be unproductive. if we do the posting tomorrow, which we have to do, what other than allocation with the recommendation that we have, is there going to be another one? Because if it is, we need to put it in. And then what, other than the criteria that we have before you, do we need to change or provide? That's what I'm not understanding.
That's, I think, what we've been giving you feedback on. Am I unclear?
I have a couple of recommendations for how that, I think, first of all, getting this last night, I think even already on Wednesday, we'll be more prepared to kind of address some of these questions. I think to Commissioner Yu's point about the engagement sessions, how you all presented this information at the engagement session, I think was a little more accessible for everyone in the room because they didn't have anything. And I think that in addition to what we have might be more helpful. And then finally, also sharing the community feedback. I don't think I've seen that either. I think just those are a couple of the things that we can be looking at between now and next week. And I think it can be productive if we're able to process some of that information in time.
That actually leads me to a question. So no one on the commission has received any of the community engagement feedback.
I have an email from Chuck that was sent out November 8th by a staff member.
I got that.
I did, so y'all, okay.
Chuck sent it.
Okay, Chuck sent it. So if y'all missed it in your email, look for Chuck Beard in your email. And because a lot of my questions came out for grants, for general operating, actually came out of that. One example of that could be how was the decision made on the 50% of 2024? That's just out of my head. So those are what I felt like with those questions, getting those answers would then help inform the criteria for the final version that goes to legal. Does that help make sense?
Or also, if you need an outline, like I would almost do introduction, rationale, which is what you're talking about, and then criteria. And then any accountability that, if we have an accountability factor, that's missing from this too. And I don't know that Grants is planning on that. But I just think I would work from that outline of like informing so that we can have the rationale, which is a good point, behind that. And I think that was addressed. I think you have that data already because I believe from the community engagement sessions. That was there.
But thank you, Commissioner Kurtz. I think that to answer your question, I'd like feedback here, but the point of us reviewing criteria is to give feedback and have our questions answered and to give recommendations. And are you feeling like this document is fully done and formed and there's nothing else that these two documents that needs to be done? Because that's why we're discussing this.
Yes, these criteria are very similar to what we've had in the past. We did try to integrate what we learned from the community engagement. I'm not sure how to change it.
By taking the information that you're given from the commission and incorporating that into that is the way that I've understood it. That's how it's been done in the past, is that the staff gets the feedback from the commission and then answers those questions, incorporates those into the guidelines. It's that we're now so far behind due to all the missed deadlines, it feels like, that those pieces are getting pushed up against each other. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody else? Questions?
I have a question. I don't know if this could be useful. Those documents could be shared legally, like I don't know, teamwork or a computer, nothing. So we can type and put comments.
You cannot use a digital platform for collaboration towards or deliberation towards commission business.
And we have a slide presentation of our recommendations for Thrive and operating, but we didn't get to it because I was just going through and asked questions and then we
knew this was going to be a long meeting, and we are now 30 minutes over, and we have not really gotten to a good place. I'd like to go ahead and ask Vivian, if you will if you'll public notice a special meeting for the 27th.
What's the time?
That
Time
is specifically for commission, correct? Not grants.
specifically for commission.
Okay. Are we going to keep
But
our
we
same
have to
time at
schedule
12
grants
o'clock?
before that, so,
It's going to need to be on Monday or Tuesday.
and this is not box checking. This is like, do we have enough?
Do we have a quorum?
Do we have quorum, and can we do can the questions, because I think what Dr. Coleman is asking for is what is needed additionally with the approval of that criteria of both general operating and Thrive and the allocations. So, I mean, I have a concern about cutting Thrive from 20,000 to 5,000 arbitrarily, just funding everyone. That's a question that should be addressed in the criteria, I think. Because that was something that, or in the allocations, I think that's something that could be flushed out.
We can raise those.
We can raise those questions then. Commissioner Khalil? Anything? Okay.
So we raised the questions the 27th. We had, okay, that's what I'm not understanding. I'm sorry.
If there's going to be a grants committee meeting, like there should have been 2 weeks ago, then all of this work would have been flushed out there, came to commission, and then all of these questions would be considered here. We would then have voted, we would have had it on the agenda, we would have voted on the criteria for both, on the allocation for both. It would have gone back to legal and finance for their final approval to bring back to us for final approval. Can you see where we're behind? Those steps?
Oh, I know very well where we're behind.
Yeah.
Straight, it'll be
So-
right in front of you.
Any questions?
I have a question. How do we post an agenda for the commission meeting without the grants meeting having not
We have to
happened
have that
yet?
first, yeah.
We just. Okay.
Can the grants committee meet? That's a question I
That's
would
what we're,
have.
yeah, just discussing the grants committee meeting. When would, because that would need to happen prior to this commission meeting.
Is the composition of the grants committee, would this meeting happen under the same composition of the grants committee that has been there all along? Yeah. Okay. So it would have to be Monday or Tuesday? And so if it's going to be the same people, then Commissioner Love, would you be available Monday or Tuesday?
I don't know the time. Like what? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
The regular scheduled time for that meeting is 12:30. It's an hour-long meeting, so 12:30 to 1:30, unless you want to change the time. Monday or Tuesday.
And then Commissioner McCoy, you're on the committee as well.
I can come either day.
So Commissioner Jester,
I'm free, yeah.
okay. So 12:30 Monday, grants? Does that give the time? I guess what Dr. Coleman is still asking from us is what do they need to do in the meantime? Is that kind of what I'm hearing to make it simple? Okay. So what are we asking?
I think that if those of us on the committee, take the time to really dive deep, like we didn't have the time to do, into the email that we got last night, that will well inform our conversation for Monday. I think if there are any questions that have come from this conversation today from commissioners, if you could email those to Dr. Coleman, and if you could expediently email those to the grants committee members, keeping in mind that we can't reply to that email, or actually send them to Tessa.
In this situation, send them to me.
Yeah. So given the information that we have from last night, we'll review that. Any questions that come from commissioners from this meeting today need to go to Tessa, so Tessa can send them to the grants committee.
I would also say, if you have questions, please call me on the weekend, because just call me and I'll answer them or make sure they are answered.
Briefly for the record, I did receive the community feedback from Mr. Beard on November 8th, so my apologies.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of information in that, and going through it, there were just, that kind of informed a lot of my questions for today. And so I think that would be helpful. Moving on to scheduling the special session for Wednesday, the 27th. For everyone, this is, I mean, it's the day before Thanksgiving. So,
Hi.
hi. We could do 12. And on that agenda, we will, yeah,
Chair West,
or early.
if we want to do 10 o'clock in the morning, if y'all want to do earlier, or if y'all want to stick to the 12 o'clock. I just stress that I have to find an available
I was
space.
just thinking that.
And
yeah.
also, I have to make sure that in Metro Nashville Network, they have someone available. I can't say yes. I know that you all are saying yes to this, and we need this, but I can't say yes to this meeting unless I have those two things, and that second one is very important. We cannot have a meeting that is not recorded at this time.
No.
That is something that I have to make sure of. We cannot have a meeting unless it's being recorded.
So we really can't notice this right now.
I will notice it today as soon as I have confirmation.
Okay.
Today, it will be confirmed. If it's confirmed today, it will be posted today. The latest, it'll be in the morning.
Thank you. Okay.
We have confirmation from Nashville Network team. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris? The manager for that department is reporting today.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I have to confirm is a location.
I have a question.
Commissioner Wade?
Recognizing that we're about to be doing some very heavy lifts in the next several days, it probably behooves us to also be preparing and thinking about what happens when we miss the deadline.
Thank you. Exactly.
And so there needs to be potentially a conversation relative to this with either the executive committee or something, because we do need to be prepared. We do need to have some conversation, I believe, with MHRC in advance of what concessions, not the best word, but we need to be talking to them about these things that we're planning to do in the next few days, but also about how can we, recognizing that we've missed or are potentially going to miss this deadline, what can we then do? And so certainly Tessa and potentially Councilmember Stiles, et cetera, need to be in whatever the conversations are, but we should be realistic in what our planning is around how we move forward, not eschewing the work that's about to be done over the next week. But if it's not done by Wednesday, then the next problem looms. And we can't pretend like that's not accurate.
Thank you. I think I cannot agree with you more. Thank you, Tessa. Yes.
I want to note for the commission that I've engaged MHRC's counsel in some proactive communication regarding the deadlines and the terms of the conciliation agreement for cures of breaches. So I have started that cures of breaches. I apologize. I have a cold. A cure of a potential breach to the conciliation agreement, and so your attorney is planning for all scenarios.
At what point do we hear from our attorney what those scenarios might be and what they entail for the people up here that have to live by, work through, et cetera?
The conversation was very preliminary. It happened today. And I can develop a more in-depth communication to send out to this body.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know that we need to, Dr. Coleman, did you hand out your report? Okay, thank you. So I think that we could all read through that and address questions directly to Dr. Coleman. In new business, we do have a committee appointments. Tessa, is that something I can send out to you and that can be sent out to the whole commission? That's not something that has to be voted on, correct?
No, that's the purview of the commissioner.
Okay, I've touched base with everyone, so everyone's been assigned a committee, so I just didn't know if that goes into effect today or when those new committees kick in.
You could send them to Director Coleman to send out to the commission, and they can be publicly posted on the website.
Great, thank you very much. But are they effective immediately?
I thought it was January 1st.
Correct, January 1st, sorry.
That's what I was thinking. I
But
just
just
wanted to be
the-
real clear, so everybody knows. where they
Sorry,
need
I
to
thought
be
we were
next
talking
week.
about just the notice of
Oh,
it.
just a notice. No, just so everyone knows what they're on and where they need to be next week. Again, I hate that we are going to need to call these two meetings next week. I cannot let us leave without acknowledging my concern of these missed deadlines, communication, performance, roles, and how we got here. That being said, we've got to be looking forward and try to push this through without sacrificing the quality that this community deserves and all the work that's gone into it. I'm disappointed that the past two meetings have gone this way without any resolution. And Dr. Coleman, I would encourage you to please, you and Ms. Davis, to reach out to commissioners with answers, and please, you all reach out with your questions. And when, is there anyone else working on grants that the commission needs to know that they could address questions to? Or is
There
it
was someone-
solely?
It's the two of us. There was, one of the staff members was helping us with the Excel, but they're not involved.
But Josiah and Claudia are not 50% on grants?
Not now, not
Okay.
at this point. That is the plan.
Okay, but currently, just wanted to make, so roles are clear. You communicate with Dr. Coleman and Ms. Davis on all matters of grants, strategic funding, grants manager, executive director. But I do think that we've got to have some sort of agreement about how we're moving forward with communication, both internally, externally, and meeting these deadlines. And again, I think this would have been a much more productive meeting if we had the materials in advance before last night and to be able to really think this through, thoughtfully come together with questions. So I would really ask that that happen in the future. I appreciate all the work everyone's doing. None of this is easy. We knew none of this was going to be perfect. And we've got to get through it somehow. So, Commissioner, you.
Can we share? Sorry. Can we share with Reverend Tucker the feedback from the community engagement? So
Absolutely.
You can have it.
You have it. Yeah, you've got it, right? Yeah. Thank you, Reverend Tucker. Okay. You'll be receiving something from Vivian in terms of our specially called meeting with that agenda. And I
have
make
the
it
time for the commission meeting. I know it's,
12,
okay, because I have 12:30 for the grants.
12 o'clock.
Different
It's a
day.
regular scheduled time. Unless you all want to move it up because of what is the day before.
Does 10 work for everyone?
If everyone wants to meet at 10, I can schedule for a 10 a.m. start time, and that gets us out earlier, and people could possibly get on the road if they still need to, or we can still have it for 12 o'clock. I just need at least the 8 people that are going to be there. I need a confirmation of that, please.
10. Let's do 10
For which day?
for the 20, for the commission meeting.
I'm good for that.
10. Is that good? So it has been spoken that that meeting will be scheduled for 10 a.m. on November 27th.
Yes. And I will email you agenda items this afternoon.
Yes, please. And for grants as well, if you can please get that agenda to me by the end of today.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you all for being here.
Can I make one more
Yes.
statement? I just want to say that I know that Dr. Coleman and Ms. Davis are working hard. And so I want it on record that someone has said that they are working hard. Certainly none of us have been all that we need to be in this process, but we've done a lot of reiterating about what they supposedly have not done. Let's do a bit of iterating of what they have done. Again, none of us are perfect in this room, and so thank you, Dr. Coleman. I get texts. I have gotten some texts late from Dr. Coleman and things, and so thank you also, Sydney. We're with you, not against you. And I just felt the need to say that because, this meeting has been a whole lot of regurgitating the same thing, and it is not just our two team members that are not getting all the things done in the way that we want them done. It's all of us. We all have some responsibility there. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. I concur with that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. I concur with that as well. And as this is my first meeting chairing, there will be some changes coming up with scheduling and other things. So please look for that hopefully will run smoother and more efficiently. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.